My ugly point is Falcons versus the world. I think it's fucking ugly.
This is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter, and for whatever reason, I actually know the reason, because I've had Pimp on every other show, and I even do a show with him. In my brain, I assumed he must have been on this show loads of times, but actually what I noticed when I did, the joke is, this is how bad it is now, how many shows I've done, boys. I just have to Google my own show's name and the guest's name and see if Google says it. So when I did it, we did do an episode with Pimp. When the show began, I think you were like the 7th guest or something, Pimp, so it's not intentional, but we sort of skipped you, mate. Where have you been for all these years?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought you just didn't like me. Maybe it was Maui, being a bit afraid that I would come in and take over his podcast as well. So, yeah. Okay. I don't know. Okay. There's always a bit of spice between me and Maui. So, yeah.
True.
We can't stop arguing.
True.
We actually hate
we'll never stop arguing on desks.
Well, since spice is the variety of life, how about this, boys? We're going to start with our hottest topic. And I selected it. I obviously got the points from these guys, but I selected which one. So we're going to start in the ugly section. And Pimp, what is your ugly point? What do you think about them on, mate?
My ugly point is, and I want to go, I mean, we discussed it a little bit in our little show, Counterpoints, but my ugly point is Falcons versus the world. I think it's fucking ugly, the way that I think it's fucking ugly the way that Falcons treat themselves. I think it's ugly the way they play Counter-Strike right now. I think it's ugly the way they haven't won a trophy. And I think the way that the community is reacting to them having not won a trophy or doing whatever the fuck they're doing is ugly as fuck. I think everything in regards to Falcons right now, whenever I look at internally within Falcons, how they conduct themselves as a team, that's ugly. I think it's super ugly how the community seems to be fucking dick riding the fact that they're not winning trophies, loving it and just hammering them down as they were the worst team ever to be assembled in Counter-Strike, and it's some of the worst players ever to play Counter-Strike. If you were to remove the nameplates and you just read how the community speaks about Falcons and how they treat some of those players, it's almost like they're not even a top 10 team. So I think like the whole conversation, the whole debate, the whole topic that is Falcons is just outright ugly for me.
Okay. By the way, I can tell we're going to go back and forth, so I like the brief up. Go on, man. What do you think? It's a pretty good topic, right?
Yeah. There's a lot to bring up for Falcons. I feel like, I mean, the first thing is I think the community sentiment regarding the team is pretty damn. It's just stupid. Like, people are just turning their brains off way too frequently when there's conversations about them. I mean, you could say what you want about how they play, and I'll get to that. But I feel like there was one thread. Okay, so the Reddit thread I kind of was just looking at earlier, maybe yesterday actually, regarding the Falcons and people's reaction to it was the one where it says Falcons remove Lars Robel as sports psychologist on Reddit. And this one was just so funny because I mean, people acted like all he did was lose for them. Like, they acted like he was directly responsible for everything. I mean, the Lars Robel, for everybody that doesn't really know, is working with all of the Falcons projects, some of which extremely successful.
Absolutely.
Some of them just the way that, what was it, like the Dota team?
They're one of the best in the world, man.
Yeah, I think they were pretty much hailed as the best team of last year. I mean, there were various other championships that they won. I mean, they won that EWC total project prize or whatever, for the entire event. And some of that people kind of laugh about because it's just the Saudis giving themselves an award. But it is because that they place the best throughout all of these tournaments at EWC because they have other teams, other clubs that are actually playing to a very high level, and many would consider to be top 3 in the game. And I still think that Falcons, even though they're not lifting trophies, should easily be regarded as a top 5 team. It's just kind of like the Maus conversation. Like, they're not winning trophies, but they're getting so close. They're beating elite teams on a frequent basis that not having a trophy definitely hurts in the cabinet. But if you see the level of CS that they're playing, pretty rare for other teams to actually take down Vitality, actually push teams like Furia when they were in their prime of last year. So the community sentiment will never be fair to them, but I also think that's kind of the target you put on your back as an organization when you do just kind of play bully ball with buying anybody out that you want, putting together a super team, and people. Above all else in sports, I think that people do like to laugh when super teams fail.
I just want to add to the notion about Lars Robel as well, because I think that's an excellent point in how Falcons are treated unfairly. Like, he was involved in most of the Astralis major success when they were winning 4 majors in a row. He was involved and basically built up the Vitality project together with Sonic to win the major with Vitality. And then he went into Falcons, and as you said, maybe not in the strict Counter-Strike department, didn't really win a big trophy, didn't really get it done, but he was part of the whole EWC winning, where he was in fact hired, to be overall overseeing the sports psychology of Falcons, not only the Counter-Strike team. So one may even argue that he wasn't even hired to be 20% involved in the Counter-Strike team. It's just the notion that I feel whenever you discuss Falcons, you said it yourself, Maui, you feel people turn off their brain. I think it just outright, outlines how many people doesn't have a fucking brain when it comes to thinking about what it is that people do when in Counter-Strike. You can't turn off a brain that doesn't exist in the first place. And I feel like that's where we're going with this whole Falcon thing. You would go with whatever narrative that fits your, haha, let's laugh at them. And I get it. I agree with your point that when you act like Falcons do, and when you throw big money into it, and when you talk about winning trophies, you talk about winning majors, and you set the expectations high, yes, you put a target on your back. But that doesn't mean that we get to treat them, I almost feel like they're one of the most unfairly treated teams I've ever come across in my time as an analyst the past 10 years, where it's like, it doesn't matter what they do outside of winning a trophy, they'll be a joke to you. Them coming second in Hong Kong, almost beating Furia, they were playing the best Counter-Strike Furia may ever play. Them coming in to the final in, was it Sydney, playing against Vitality, almost beat Vitality, had Vitality beat in that game on Nuke, peak Vitality, the best ever Vitality. Absolutely. Doesn't matter, they're still shit because they didn't beat him. It's like it almost feels unfair to me, and I get they have a big target on their back, and I get the expectations are high, but I feel like people are just outright dumb when it comes to that point. And it's not about people turning off their brains; it's about how many people who are actually outing the fact they don't have a brain. And I hate that whole sentiment, and that's kind of the last point I want to make with the ugly thing is I hate how many people in the community who pretends to have an opinion about something they don't understand. And I feel like understanding Falcons and understanding what's going on within Falcons is at an all-time fucking low.
By the way, obviously there's a bunch more we can go back and forth on. On this Lars Robel thing, I'll use my esports historian role. First of all, he wasn't actually there for the first Astralis win. That was that Finnish one who later worked with Ents. But he was there for the 3 other wins as far as I know. And then he was there in Vitality, a totally different team that just had like 2 of the players and Zonic, and then won in that team too. By the way, that means if you're a Ziwu fan, Ziwu never had a fucking major or won a playoff series till this guy turned up. Like, that's just a literal fact. Like, does that not count in any way? So we're doing that thing where, just like with Zonic, we delete everything from before CS2 because why? Because it's not relevant. No, because it's inconvenient if you want to say they're total frauds and absolute shit. That's not how anything works. I've seen people do this before with Bill Belichick in the NFL. They go, well, if you just remove all the rings he won with Tom Brady, he never won a ring. First of all, it's not even true. He's a defensive coordinator of the New York Giants. But that's like saying, if I just take away all the things you did that were amazing, you're shit. It's like, well, that doesn't even make sense, does it, you moron? I've got an angle for you that's a banger, right? No matter who you think I dislike, tell me a single lie I ever told about them. You can't find one, by the way. If you say, you're just biased against Fallen, tell me a lie I said about him. Tell me a provable fact I ever misrepresented or said the false version. Do you know why I don't do that? Because I don't need to. I can tell you why Fallen's overrated by using things actually in his career. I can tell you why I think fucking Ziwu's not the GOAT by using things in his career. I don't need to lie. Like, I've got a mega strong argument on its own. It actually implies to me, like you say, it's just haterism. You're just getting off on hating them. And I can tell you the sad news, Pimp. It will never stop for Falcons. The only way it stops for Falcons is this. You have to literally win everything. You have to do what Vitality did. Now, you might think that's not even true. There's plenty of teams that like that win. No. I'll give you a few sports examples. I'm a Liverpool fan. So Liverpool, everyone said, you haven't won the league for like 20-something, you haven't won the league for 25 years, you haven't won the league for 28 years. So eventually they won the league with one of the best performances in the history of the Premier League. Then every fan, the same hater, just went, you've only won one in 30 years. Then, are you ready? Man City has won all the fucking championships, mate. So then all the fans just go, you just bought the league. So they'll do the same thing. One, even if they win this fucking major, they'll do the following. They'll go, well, all you've done is won one major with Morrissey and Nico. 2, you bought it anyway, so it doesn't count. And then the same argument where every loss, I hate this because it shows you're a moron if you're a fan. Every time they lose a match, just like with Simple and BC Game, you go, this many million to lose a match like that. No, that's not the price. That would never be the way the price works in that sense, by the way. Because, you don't actually, like, get the millions taken away and then the next match have to pay $2.5 million for them to play again. Like, guess what? When Sork or in BC Game, all the matches they play are covered within the 2.x million. Like, that's how that works. So, doesn't make any sense. So, the same people, when they win the major, bro, will just be like, 20 million to win a major. It's like, you can't win with someone like that. An idiot like that, the saying, I took this angle from someone who said a political line, but you like it anyway. That's an idiot, right? That has a blank picket sign and a Sharpie pen, and they're waiting for something to happen, then they write the sign. So what they do is, once you do something wrong, they just write whatever that was. So the point is, like I say, the same sign that would have said you've won no trophies with Monacy will just say you only won one trophy. They'll just scratch out no and put in one trophy. It's the same. It's the exact same point, by the way. It's not even a particular. By the way, notice why it's not an interesting point, because they never at any point actually give you any analysis. They don't tell you why Monacy hasn't won a title. They don't say what Zonic and Lars Robel are doing wrong that makes them idiots. In fact, the Lars Robel one is the best example, Pimp, because none of his work in theory is totally viable outside of the server. It's all things you'd have to know, like either from how the player's thinking, or you'd have to be in those circles, which you'll never be now thanks to that fucking video clip where he was unpacking the backpack, which is his whole system. And the joke I made at the time was, unpacking the backpack is something they were doing in Vitality, I'm going to guess in Astralis as well. That's why one thing I'd love to know, maybe he can say now he's not in, is, Magus, come on, mate. Can't you just tell us that we used to do that in all the teams? That wasn't just something they invented to bully Boros, who, by the way, he's had a great career since, hasn't he? It's almost like they heard the stories I've heard, guys. So I agree on that one. They're always going to hate on you no matter what, mate. But there's more valid aspects of Falcons, because I actually liked what you said as well, Pimp. There's plenty of ugly things inside fucking Falcons. I do think at this point in time, here's where I blame Zonic. I do think eventually, in my opinion, by the way, unless they win quite a lot of trophies this year, at the end of this year, I will totally have the discussion every time we talk about Falcons, should they get a different coach? Because now he's had plenty of time and he's had a bunch of really good players, mate. I didn't count him that much for the first year, but now I think he does have to count. Here's the more important thing, Pimp, is I actually hate the way he fucking communicates to the public. Because what I don't like is half the whole we need one more superstar is a direct result of how Zonic does interviews. Because his interviews are always, by the way, could even be something valid. Here's the thing. Have you ever heard this saying? I think you even have it in the Nordic region, Pimp. A lot of proverbs are the same everywhere. Do you know the proverb that goes, excuses are like arseholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink. It's a fucking banger. I know the Swedes have one just like that, right? The reason why that's a mega quote is, I think every single excuse that Zonic says is true. I bet there was a period where they didn't get enough practice together, or they couldn't get the boot camp together, or a player joined late, or they had a visa. Here's the problem, Zonic. Every fucking team has those issues. Every team has them, but because you are perceived as Pep Guardiola getting all the fucking players and having infinite money to spend, you're the last person anyone wants to hear that excuse from. Save that excuse for the vlog/documentary when you win the tournament, mate. Then it'll be a banger. Actually, I've always said, if you do an excuse from a position of power, you can actually cause things to change. Here's what I hate about Zonic and the way that Falcons does interviews. First of all, you guys can say whatever you like about this. The organisation are little bitches, mate. They absolutely do contact fucking TOs and cry publicly that people are making fun of them or doing a skit or that an analyst said a mean comment. I even heard a fucking rumour, by the way, that they were thinking about getting some of their people to boycott the HLTV awards because they weren't going to win an award or something mental. Something absurd, or someone wasn't nominated for an award. Listen, that's not Zonic, etc. But as an org, you are just fucking bitches. You deserve to get reamed out by everyone in the scene. You're not helping yourself there. You're playing into this negative stereotypes. And then also, here's what I would like from Zonic. How about the two following things? One, since you are Pep Guardiola now, bro, you did get everything. You already had what I thought was a mega team when you had Monacy without Kiyosuke. Then you got Kiyosuke as well. That is some Pep Guardiola shit, mate. That's you could have someone else's star player as your third option. What are we doing here? If you have that player, not only do I not want to hear excuses, I want to hear the opposite. I want to hear skin in the game, mate. I want you to say something like the following. I agree with fans that it's a disgrace that we haven't won any trophies and we should win the major. In fact, you know what? Within one of the 2 seasons this year, we will win a prestige event. And do you know what? At the end of the year, that could look really bad, mate. What if you don't win one, you should probably be fired, mate. At that point in time, get your fucking nuts out, put them on the table. Weren't you a pro player? You know that actually results is what counts. Not the effort, not a cool idea you had, but I'm doing my best. No, results is all that matters, mate. You knew that in MTW, you knew that in Astralis, you knew that completely. Again, I'll just give you one last bit of food for thought. If you'd have had some player in your team, could be a Kirby, could be a Cajun B, could be a Carrigan, could have been a config. If they'd have said some shit like that to you, I know we didn't win, boss, but you know what? I tried. I wanted to win. Wouldn't you fucking go, that's not good enough, mate? I have a professional standard I expect you to meet, and this team's about winning. What's changed? Because I'm with you. First year, 2024, I'll defend that all day long. That team could never have won anything. But now, The only, again, I said this to Pimp on the episode. I didn't make you take Keisuke and fuck all the roles in the table. When you did that, I even said on this show, Maui can attest to this. If he wins now with this roster, we will say he is a genius. He actually reinvented T-side Counter-Strike with roles we've never seen before. And now we have to say Sonic was the dude. It couldn't have just been fragging, because actually, if you put these 5 in an FPL pug against Vitality, they'd never win a map. What the fuck could they do? So I think that's a lot of it. I think they also bring it all themselves too, boys. Any thoughts on the play element dynamic? There's got to be more, as you said. Having no trophies is ugly, bro.
Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, Maui, but I made the point in Counterpoints with Duncan a few days ago that I feel like heading into this season, Tessus is a great player, but Tessus in the current role he's in is just being not utilized the way he should have been utilized, right? And I think everyone sees that. I'm curious whether that is. I have the thought in my mind, and I don't know where it came from, but I have an idea whether that's Falcons, not wanting to sign another superstar or not wanting to spend any more money on getting a bit heavy guard, whatever they could get in their position that, obviously would be better than Tessus. Is that Falcons saying, nah, we're done spending, now you got to make this work? Or is that Sonic not willing to make that, quote unquote superstar signing, so he's running out of excuses? Because I feel like I agree with Duncan here in the sense that if Sonic went down and said, we tried to transform Tessus into becoming a great anchor player, I get it, it didn't work out, and I don't necessarily put the blame on Sonic or on Tessus or whatnot. It's a valid excuse because I see it as well, but why don't you change that piece then? Why don't you get rid of that excuse, sign the player that you feel should be in that position, and then you're running out of excuses? Because I feel like when we say, Maui, on the desk that Falcons now finally have this super team, they have all the players they want. Do they really? Do you consider Tessus to be a top 5, top 10 player in his specific role? I don't as of right now. So if you're all in, if you're Falcons, if you want to go that route of signing all the superstars, I feel like you should have done that in this player season. Now that you didn't, I'm curious if that's Sonic, making sure there's still another excuse, quote unquote, or if that's Falcons saying, we're done, we're done spending, we're done giving out, make this work, or we find someone else.
I don't think Tessus is too uncomfortable in the positions. I think on some of his roles on T side, I think he has to just be that sacrificial guy. But on Heroic, even when he was pretty good on them, he was playing a couple of the smaller bomb sites and everything as an anchor. So I don't think that, and I guess, you could get somebody like Bit or Heavy God that would have more skill, and then they would be able to probably just get a kill here or there that Tessus otherwise wouldn't. But in terms of just being the having the bitch roles, having the worst possible positions, that's something that Tessus isn't incredibly unfamiliar with. And there's so few people that I think would be a reasonable upgrade over him. Like if we look at those kind of anchor of the year conversations and everything, there are really only a couple guys that were above him. I mean, obviously, Mezzy and Rops are kind of off the table, but if it really is just Bit and Heavy God. So you're knocking on the door of another premier organization at that point, which seems less likely to me that Falcons would even be able to offer. I mean, there's always a price, I guess. So there's never entirely.
Let me throw you something at you,
Falcons have spent.
Maui. I want to see what you think. Obviously, this is like a bit of a reach because right now no one knows what the status of this player is, and I'm dependent on getting the form. What would you say if I said replace Tessus with NAV?
With NAV, I mean, that's only a slight up. I think that's only a slight upgrade.
Okay.
I think it. I mean, would I personally like it? I would like to see NAF be competing for trophies. So yes, because I think that the trajectory of NAF's career. I like it for meta reasons more than I like it for Falcons. I like it because in the GOAT NA conversation, it's just Elysian Twist. NAF doesn't even really hold a candle to them. But if Falcons start winning trophies with NAF, then I think the conversation opens up for NAF. So that's for an entirely different slew of reasons than him being that much better. Last season for NAF, I would say that he was better than Tessus lightly, but I also don't think he was nearly as sacrificial as Tessus. Like Tessus has to do some pretty unenviable sort of entry sort of things. Sure. when they're going and taking space, but NAF pretty much always gets to lurk. Like NAF kind of was this hard lurker for Liquid that. Like if Falcons gave NAF all of the space that he has on Liquid, I don't think they operate as the same kind of team.
That's my issue with the whole Tessus conversation, because I think it's so unfair that we speak about Tessus as being, I called him a budget ketchup in Counterpoints, because I think in the role that he's playing right now, he is a budget ketchup. Like he's never going to be a top 5 player in that specific role, and statistically speaking, like the last 6 months is the worst 6 months in Tess's career by a 0.01 rating. Like it's not even close. Like he's never been in a slump like this in Heroic. He's never been in a slump like this even when he was, making his waves early on with MSL and Copenhagen Wolves or whatever the fuck they were called. Like he's never even been close to playing and having as bad as an output as he's having right now, even with rating 3.0, however you want to, debate whether that's good for him or bad. I also do think that there's other players that I would put, like Neff would be a slight upgrade to me. I'd look at Schuss as well. I think he would be a better fit. I think a player that has been in that role for a long time, and a player that doesn't need. Tess needs a bit of catering. He needs a bit of space. He needs to be able to move. He needs to be able to express himself on a server. He's always been hyper aggressive. Came from Heroic. Came from a system with Cadian where he was constantly being proactive, constantly making a move to win around, involved in a lot of opening. Like I don't see the same freed up Tesses right now. He's basically coming from Heroic, where if you didn't make a proactive move, KDM would yell at you and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you standing still? To a point now where he's in Falcons where it's like, oh, just stay still. Let QC do the job. Let Nico do it. Let Monacy go for peak. We'll need you later. And I think that's the main issue with Tesses. He's way too good to be hindered in that role. I think he even when Dexter was part of the lineup and before Monacy came in and before they started to practice with Monacy, like he was one of the best performers in the grand finals for Falcons in his quote unquote old role. So it's not that Tesses is a bad player. It's just that I see a guy from NIP. I see Shush come in and be a better fit. I see Nafly from Liquid, who's in a fucking slump, come in and be a better fit about the team that I think on paper should be the best team in the world. If that's not, willing to explore, then I don't know what is for Falcons.
But I've got a quick angle for, and then we can go on to the next point. On the Falcons thing, the thing I'm saying about Zonic, I'll give you the perfect contrast, because I think this is an example of someone who took amazing responsibility. Privately, when Carrigan was in FaZe, and he had that super team with Olaf Meister and Guardian, where on paper it was the craziest roster ever constructed, and he'd already lost the Boston Major, right? This was like, I think, around the time, I think it was before he lost Katowice. He'd already lost the Boston Major, but he was coming into the next year, 2018, and Boston Major was in like January or something like that. And after this, I had like a private conversation. He won't mind me saying this publicly. And basically, I talked to him, and we were actually trying to, at the time, like the joke is, it was like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We were trying to like put our heads together, because at the time he used to have a bad matchup in the Fallens SK, and everyone thought Fallens SK would actually rule that year, because it was one where they had bolts and they'd won some tournaments in the lead up, and they had to use Phelps at the major, so everyone thought that didn't count, right? And so when we were trying to put it all together, I was like going, yeah, you could do this with the Veto, you should probably play like a little bit differently on Overpass. And then when we were doing it, right, and I said something like, and if it all comes together, like, why wouldn't this team be able to win every tournament? Like, look at the fucking players. And Carrigan told me, oh no, I literally should get flamed if I don't win every tournament, like every big tournament, because what excuse do I have? I've got all the players I want. I've got all the best players I could ever ask for, basically. So if I don't win, it must be me. And here's why he is legit as fuck. Yes, that was a private conversation, but when I say the following, you'll know what I mean. Here's how you know his actions lived up to that. Because when he got kicked out of FaZe Clan, if I was him, remember, he got cocked by Nico for IGL first for a couple of tournaments, and then he was just outright kicked from the team. I did this thing where I don't think Nico explicitly said kick him, but put it this way, every other member of that team since then, privately and publicly, has said, oh, I didn't want him kicked, or I wish we hadn't have kicked him, basically. So it kind of just tells you, like, put it this way, Nico was the main one who agreed with that decision, let's just say that. You have never ever seen, ever, beyond like jokes in ESL skits, Carrigan imply that was an unfair kick. Because he himself understands that the reason I got kicked is I brought in some of the biggest winners and the best players in Counter-Strike for a project where we were all getting paid megabucks, and the only goal, we're not best friends, was to fucking win massive trophies, and I didn't do it, so how can I blame them for kicking me? And then lastly, I'll even put this out there, he didn't even do it when he went back to FaZe later and won the major and all the prestige events. Mate, I would be vindictive as fuck, mate. I would literally have like won that major, walked off the stage and just done a fucking tweet with @Nico, just being like, where's your major, dickhead? I'd have done some shit. Or who was the problem now, homie? How do you like my IG link now on your fucking face, bitch? I'm vindictive like that. Carrigan's never even done that ever, mate, beyond like little jokes in fucking ESL skits, which half the time plams back on him. So all I'm saying is, Donick, you're supposed to be a winner like that, mate. So just show me a bit of spine. You know what? Because at the end of the day, if you can't promise you're going to win trophies, then why are you doing this? Is it just for money? I thought it was for something great, to have an epic project you're in charge of. Like, at that level, you do have to guarantee success, in my opinion, because that's what the job is.
That's a personality thing, though, with Sonic.
Sure.
He's like knowing from the inner workings as well. He's way too nice to ever say that. I think if Sonic ever were to come out and do what you're suggesting, which I kind of like, from my personal taste as well, go out and say we are going to win a trophy within this next 6 months, and if we don't, that'll be a disaster. Like, he's just way too candid, way too nice. He doesn't want to add any pressure towards the players, doesn't want to do anything that's outside of the norm. And I've spoken to Sonic before, when doing desk setup, desk work. I remember when was it Yuki or maybe it was Yuki in Astralis when they brought him in as an AWP player.
Yeah.
The other dude that I forgot, Lucky or whatever the fuck he was called. Where Kaspervitz says, this is our guy, this is the future. We're not just going to keep him for 6 months. We're going to build the team around like yada. And now I called out the bullshit on Danish television and said, like, naturally, you're not, like, nobody else wants to fucking join you. This is a third rank upper. This is not good enough if you're Astralis. And then Sonic messaged me, it's like, you can't speak about the players like that. It's not nice. It's not cool that you do that, etc., etc. So he's too good-hearted, he's too nice, he's too light-hearted in a sense. And I think the biggest decision I've ever seen Sonic take was to kick Dupree after the major when they won with Vitality to bring in Flamesy. And I think essentially deep inside he didn't want to do that. Like, I think that was probably the one time where he without knowing for sure, I think he probably kind of compensated himself and compensated the human he wanted to be in terms of, obviously getting the upgrade in Flamesy, getting a cheaper player. It made sense on all fronts, but on a personal level, I think Sonic would have probably liked to stick with Dupree had it not been for that, because he values being nice, I think he values coming from that family atmosphere that we're in Astralis, and I think that's why you're never going to hear Sonic ever say anything like that.
Oh, by the way, I've got one last angle. You can choose to respond or not, or we can move on. One last angle is this. I'll probably even do a piece of content and just title it this. Like, here's why, literally, it's all on Sonic right now. Because, I just said in 2024, by the way, I could debate anyone on a talk show as to why that's totally unfair, the expectations for 2024 Falcons. Like, it was built around Nico. Nico didn't join. He didn't join in a way that absolutely fucked the entire roster for a whole year. He then even kept fucking the roster. I've told the story on Counterpoints by implying he'd join halfway through the year after the first season, then he didn't do that. Then he kept waiting longer and longer and longer. He did all that, right? Here's why I actually think now it's all on Sonic, though. All of it is because of the following. When Sonic had the chance to sign a player, he had millions of dollars at his disposal. He didn't sign a player that rounded his team out and made an excellent squad. He signed Keisuke. That signing alone is actually probably the biggest reason why I put this whole roster on Sonic's shoulders right now. Because think about the team they had, boys. The whole reason so many people were skeptical about the signing is you're already signing someone that's like Nico, basically. You don't even need that player. By the way, there's another thing. You don't even need that firepower. You've already got Nico Monesi. You've got Nico Monesi and Tessis, and you've even got like a fragging IGL. You never needed more firepower. That's why I said if you'd have won with that, you'd have just reinvented Counter-Strike, because you're doing it with like more. That's not even like a quality we needed more. This is like you had a car that was already really fast but had shit steering. You just made the engine faster. Make the fucking steering better. So that's why I do put it on Sonic now, Pimp, because he could have taken those millions. And say what you like, by the way, if you think of the time when Keisuke joins, that's actually right around the time when some like Heavy God's available, mate. And I'll tell you what, if you take those millions and give them to the team he was on, they're fucking taking it straight off your hands, mate. Millions of dollars for that guy, of course, immediately. So actually, I'll give you the obvious comparison, Pimp. It's why, even though I think Mikel Arteta is an excellent football manager, it's clearly obvious he's fabulous. If you wanted to fire him, the main reason to fire him is he refuses to acknowledge that he should have signed a proper striker that was a guaranteed striker, mate. Instead, what he did is sign that joke fucking one, who even sounds like his name is Joke, and then he just kept signing more fucking defenders and midfielders. Like, at that point in time, mate, you just chose not to win. Like, there was an obvious piece to do. You chose. Now listen, if he wins without them, Pimp, then I give him all his praise. Wow, you were right, I was wrong. Fucking amazing job. I would have said the same to Sonic with his signing. But you took a bizarre gamble, but as far as I can tell, no one had a gun to your head. You had to sign Keisuke. It's not even that Keisuke's bad. I hope people get the point here. It's just you signed another winger when what you needed was a fucking defender.
Yeah, I think in order to move on, I agree, but it's like it's counterproductive to do what you want. Like, everyone is looking for Falcons to win right here, right now, and when you have the opportunity to sign Keisuke, I think you should. I think it's like signing, as you said, like signing Cristiano Ronaldo when he was a young player. Like, even though he doesn't necessarily fit in the team from the get-go, he will be a superstar in the future. And if you don't get him now, odds are you'll never get him. Odds are he goes to another team.
Sure.
Or whatnot. So I feel like you were almost in a position where if you're Falcons, you had to sign him, but that also meant that you should, I wouldn't say lower your expectations, but that's not a signing you make if you want to win right now with the roster they had. And I think that's where they're like, that's what I mean with the ugly thing within Falcons. It's like everyone wants them to win right here, right now. Falcons needs to desperately win right here, right now. But as you said, like the actions, the way they sign players, the lack of signing a new player during this offseason, signing Keisuke when perhaps that wasn't what you need. Like, you're kind of sending mixed signals in a way. Do you want to win in a year from now, or do you want to win right now?
I think the signing actually more says that maybe Sonic, if you actually asked him at the time of that signing, why are you getting Kyosuke when you want to win trophies? It felt, when that signing happened, it was kind of around that time when the discussion around CS2 was, do we just stack every roster with as much firepower as possible? And I felt like if you asked Sonic in that moment, why are you doing it? He said, well, this is the direction that CS2 is headed, that it doesn't really matter if you have all of the role harmony that we needed in CSGO, because that game was more tactical and you needed to play your positions a little bit more strongly. You just want to have 4 guys that can run in at a moment's notice and just bang somebody's head off. And I feel like, that's why, I mean, coaches and GMs, they kind of talk about the game through the moves that they make and the actions that they take with roster signings. But analysts, we say these things, and, because we directly put these ideas into words, people will say, people will get mad about the fact that it's like, oh, look at the game actually wasn't about firepower. Vitality is more of a role-based team or whatever. But then they're not going to get mad at Sonic at the exact same way, even though his direct actions and the millions spent to buy this guy said exactly what we all said when it was happening.
Okay.
We can move on to my other point, though. I feel like that was a pretty thorough conversation. Okay, mine is pretty simple, though. So moving on, in the Rookie of the Year race that was ongoing last year, if you actually look at think back to what was happening there were a few names that were in the conversation. There was, at the beginning, there was Molid, or kind of later on, around May, Molidoy joined the conversation. There was Tanir, there was Jota. Icy was actually being regarded at one point in that sort of conversation, and there was PR. When you look back at it, HLTV made a post in July checking in on the Rookie of the Year race, and they put PR at number 1. And that conversation has thoroughly died. I mean, obviously, Molidoy took it pretty easily. I would say the runner-up last year was more likely Kyosuke. I would probably say between Tanir and PR, that was kind of like the 4th place or 3rd or 4th place finish for those guys. But I feel like a lot of the steam has left for PR, or a lot of the hype is gone for this guy now. And I just feel like what this guy is showing is unfortunately a little bit of a step back. And it's just an ugly point, because based off of the interview that he had with HLTV and kind of what was even said around the time of the bounty event, it seems like he felt like he was going to get the call up for a roster. I'm going to throw out some team names. I'm not saying that these guys were in conversation, but a team like G2 or a team like FaZe Clan looked like they should have probably been the ones to pick up PR. And it seems like almost by just kind of a poor mentality, he's not bringing in the same sort of fire into this year that he had last year. From his gameplay, just feels like he's not quite as sharp. I think he's been a little bit more aggressive in general, and maybe it just feels like he's kind of just sending it right now. So the summation of the ugly point for me is just that a guy that had a lot of hype around him last year in PR, I feel like it's falling off really quickly.
I agree. Statistically speaking, the last 3 events he did worse than Kerrigan. So I feel like if that's the the notion you're looking at, then for sure you can back it up with stats. I agree. I found that interview quite puzzling in a sense as well. I mean, if I were a PR's teammate, I'd be like, obviously we know, Gamer Legion is a quote unquote farmers team that you're supposed to move on. That you do well in Gamer Legion, you get to a better team. I don't think any of the players are not aware that can be the case, and that's probably some of the agreements they have, with Gamer Legion as well, that they're willing to sell if they get a good price for you. But to go out publicly and say that you are hoping to move on from your team that you're now stuck with, I think there's always going to be a rough pill to swallow. Like, if you're next year then coming into Gamer Legion, is that the guy you're going to try to set up? Is that the guy you're going to bank on? Is that the guy you're going to divide most of your attention to? Or are you looking at your rest? Are you looking at your high picks? Are you looking elsewhere where you need your soldiers sort of to rely on? So I think not only does he obviously make it tough for himself by not playing as well as he did, and I'll be honest, it's been 3 very poor events for PR, but up until that point at the major, he did fine. At the PGL event leading up to the major, he did fine. He's still a great player, and I still think that he can make a bounce back, but he's made it very tough for himself by playing like shit and then also having a statement like that coming into the season. So all the pressure is on him right now. If he doesn't do well the next couple of events, if I'm G2, if I'm any other team, if I'm FaZe, probably desperately looking for the next guy to fucking save my project, maybe PI isn't the first guy on the list anymore, and he kind of brought that on himself.
This is why I actually hate that leaker culture is just considered journalistic culture now because we just don't have many journalists, or they're people just doing I'm a content creator at this point in time. Richard Lewis does the odd bit of journalism, but it tends to be like bigger stories in esports, like financial things, corruption. There's not many people actually doing roster moves as journalism anymore. Nowadays, leakers get ahead of everything, and what you do is, we all even know it. We see it from a Telegram or a certain infamous individual on Twitter, and we all go, is that happening? Fuck it, let's talk about it like around the water cooler. If it is, it's fun. It's just the back page of the newspaper. If you don't know, the tabloids in the UK are famous for they do the exact same leaker culture. They take like a guy inside a club who's the fucking guy who gets the football boots out and puts them in the locker, and he heard a real rumour that like, hey, we'd like to get this person, but he then reports it, and it's reported as they're in talks to sign him, which is totally different from we'd like to get this guy, or hey, the manager once said, I wish we had this player instead. And they make it, right, here's the problem. PR's scenario isn't even unique. It's happened in League of Legends a bunch of times. If you don't know, guys, the reason he made that statement is he basically saw all these news shows, or the websites rather, and all this Twitter activity and all these talk shows talking about the idea he was going to join Mouse because they have the buyback clause or whatever the fuck that they invoked to show here. And in his mind, he actually thought, shit, I'm going to Mouse, boys. Like, fuck, this is awesome. I had that great first year. I had like a little bit of a fucking glow up. Now I get to go join one of the best teams in the world. By the way, the team that needs like a roster move. Like, this is it. Awesome. Then he went into the player break. His phone never rang. And at the end, he has to go back to Gamer Legion, which now, by the way, like it always will be, keeps getting reset and is scuffed. And even worse, people are forgetting this detail. He doesn't even have his boy Ash. Ash was the coach that made this player relevant and one of the best players outside of like a top 10 team. He doesn't even have him anymore, mate. Ash is not only on the bench, but I'll just say, I imagine he'll be leaving Gamer Legion at some point in time. He's gone out of his way to sort of say he wants bigger projects though. So I think he's stuck in a really bad scenario where I think Gamer Legion without Ash isn't going to be that interesting, mate. It's mainly the snack story at this point in time. It's probably the thing people focus on. So if you're PR, I get why you're bombed. I do agree. I would never say it that way in a public interview. I'll also shade this in as I always will, because I'm always fair culturally. He is from like Czech Republic, guys. He's not from fucking America. He's not from like a culture where they necessarily know we're going to pick apart what he says. I imagine he just said it honestly. I imagine they just asked, what do you think about this? Or what's when you form? And he just made that comment of like, essentially I thought I'd be in a different team or something. Like, I think he just was just trying to be honest. I don't think he was actually trying to do. The problem is if you're in a culture where you'd never say that and that's considered rude, people think you're saying that to force you out or to be like, I refuse to play. Or so, some like fucking Vinicius Junior shit or something where you're a big ego player trying to be a dickhead or James Harden or something. I don't think he was doing that at all, by the way. It just seems like a really chill guy to me who just has a bit of bad form and he just was saying that he thought he'd be in a different team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point, and I just want to add that for context as well. And I don't think he mind me saying that as well, but I've heard from other players, and I've heard from people who's around him, even experienced it myself doing an interview with him. Like, he is just a very chill guy. Like, he doesn't think deep thoughts about the game. He doesn't think deep thoughts about, how he's managing his career or how he's doing X, Y. Like, as most pro players do, he's just very talented and very good at playing Counter-Strike. He doesn't strike me as a guy that is overthinking stuff or has a career planned out for him or is going out in interviews, wording things in certain ways in order to push a move that way or push it out. Like, he doesn't really think that deep about anything. I did an interview with him during the major where he's like, who are we playing tomorrow in the first opening game of the major? He had no clue, a day before the game began, after the interview. So I was like, okay, if you care that little about, who you're playing, then you're just one of the guys who's on the team. And whenever Ash tells you to go to that bomb site in order to defend it, you'll do it, but you don't really think twice about why. And I think that's also probably part of why he's ending up in a situation like this, where she said, Duncan, it's not, I don't think it's ill-intended in the interview. I think it's just, him showcasing that he's just a very chill guy and he's just speaking, basically what he's thinking in the moment.
Okay, for my ugly point, I've got quite a simple one, actually. It's purposely put as ugly because if I say my ugly point is NAVI, right, here's why it's ugly, not bad. They lost to Spirit and Furia, like two of the top teams in the world. If you even watch the games, by the way, they could have gone 3 maps with Spirit, and they did go 3 maps with NAVI. Yeah, they had kind of a bit of a bad start on the third, but like, it's not like I look at it and I'll put them in bad. Like, I still think they'll be a good team. But the reason why I'm putting it in ugly is, right, normally I'd just say, leave it there. You lost to 2 of the best teams, no problem, go on. Wait a minute, are you supposed to be one of the best teams? Wasn't that the whole point of that fucking major run? That you, just like FaZe, the major run was going to justify keeping the same roster because, ready? Not that you're going to replicate, you're going to build on it. You're going to do something with that. By the way, if you keep always losing to the best teams, Mouse did this like for a whole fucking season, that means you're not as good as the best teams. You consistently lose to them, mate. Like, the reason why you lose to them makes sense even. They probably have better players. Maybe their style works better. They probably have a better map pool. Probably have a better star player. These are all things where it's like, again, if you're a lesser team with lesser expectations, I can give you a break for that. But I think when you're someone like NAVI or FaZe, you have absolutely come into this season and set up the expectation that we're all wrong saying you need us to move, and you're right. You know something we don't. Well, I'll tell you what, when I watch these games now, I think I know something you don't, which is that run at the major was the best you're going to see with this roster. I don't even know it'll be that good again, mate. And on top of that, then you had things like Fury are also kind of shit the bed at that. So they're not great now, mate, but they look fine with you in a group stage game, mate. They didn't look like they had any of those nerves on stage. No one was falling apart. They were just doing what they're supposed to do. So in the same way as I'd critique any other team, like, I actually think if you're NAVI, surely internally the conversation isn't, and if we do a really good job, we'll be the 6th best team in the world. Surely the conversation is, we got a chance to win a trophy. We can go to a final. At the major, we can be relevant. It's not like, surely NAVI aren't, but if we make the playoffs in the major, that's not a goal. Like that's a goal for like fucking 3D Max, the Mongols, Team Liquid. To me, I think it's just ugly because I actually feel like they'll do what I just did at the beginning. They'll go, it's all right, we just lost the Spirit of Fury. It's like, well, do I have to wait another tournament to find out that you'll also lose, like, I don't know, to fucking Foot in a game, or maybe PARIVISION will get you in a match? Who knows? I know they didn't this time, but I tell you what, it was actually still close. So what do you think, boys?
Well, for Navi right now, I feel what's kind of unfortunate about this team is I feel like I'm not going to justify one of Kassad's takes that Mikaze is a bad star player, but I think he just needs to probably hit the ceiling that he shows in bursts. I feel like some of the rounds come down to him a little bit more than they probably wish. And Jail was actually really, really adept in some of these spots. Like, he was really clutch. He was actually really, I think in terms of understanding how the system needed to operate, when Jail was playing at his best, it's still, he had whole tournaments where he was putting up great numbers, playing within the system, absolutely, not being a liability. Obviously, towards the tail end of him on Navi, it was a different story. He kind of tapered off as an individual, but Mikaze is kind of reaching that ceiling. And the reason I'm actually not, waving any kind of or sounding an alarm bell regarding Navi is that I think it's just kind of the natural getting integrated to Tier 1. Because reminder, he was on essentially a Tier 3 academy team, and I think the jump from Tier 2 to Tier 1. I sometimes don't give people the biggest pass because I think that if you're on the 20th ranked team, the jump to the 8th ranked team isn't that vast of a gap. But being on the 70th best team in the world, then jumping onto a team that's supposed to be competing for top 5 trophies, I think that's a little bit tougher. So I'm giving him some time. I also think that in a weird way, from the eye test, I think Bit's a little bit less impactful lately. I feel like he was so stellar during their Team of the Year run, like arguably in many tournaments the best guy on their roster. And I would say that Wonderful even has made a bit of a leap as a player. I think he's been really good for the last 3 months. Maybe Krakow actually in some of the games they lost he wasn't, but for the major he was practically a top 3 opper at that last major. Sure. So they're really. Yeah, the Krakow performance is fairly damning, but I don't think that I'm not saying that Navi's any kind of sinking ship. I give the team more rope than I do a lot of rosters, just because also I just have a lot of blind faith in Alexi B and Blade at this point that I'm not going to just immediately say they need to change. Like, I've seen that if you give them time, they can make a system extremely competitive with some of the best teams.
I'm bored of Navi, to be completely honest. I'm ready to blow up that team, and I'm ready to okay. I'm ready to basically say blow up FaZe, blow up Navi. Put them together, bring the best pieces in, and I would love to see a world where Kerrigan gets to work with Blade, and a fresh start with a Navi, and then you bring Foxen with you bring Kerrigan with you take Twist to Navi, and then you keep the best pieces over there. My problem with Navi is, because I agree, I think you summarized it pretty well, Maui. Wonderful was fantastic during the major, and that put Navi back on the map. I think that was basically spearheaded by Wonderful, most of it, by them looking competitive, by them looking great, and then obviously the whole train game versus Furia, where I'd say there was a tactical masterclass. In that sense, sure, you did well, you bought yourself some more time, and now everyone thinks, okay, let's see if you can replicate that. But Wonderful during Krakow, like he was, again, statistically speaking, worse than Kerrigan, worse than Exercise, worse than Nitro, worse than some of those players that you just simply cannot be worse than, regardless of how poor you're playing at a tournament. And Wonderful is a player that I think he annoys me, because I think we saw during the major what he can do and what he should do and what he most likely will do more often than not, but he's just a little bit too inconsistent. But that is also where it to me is becoming very evident and very obvious that NAVI they rely too much on having that one player who's like taking them to the next step, sort of. When Bit did it, as you said, in the period where they were the best team of the year, I think Bit was the elevating factor. When Wonderful did it during the major, then Wonderful was the player that kind of made NAVI look better than they maybe were, but I've lost faith, to be completely honest. And most of it are based on also watching them at tournaments, and you and I have experienced that together, Maui, but the whole body language, the whole vibe within the team, the slamming fucking disc, the arguing, they don't seem like a team who enjoys playing Counter-Strike together. And I'm not saying that you necessarily need to live in tandem in order to be a good Counter-Strike team, or you need to be best friends or do it the Astralis way. I'm just saying that if you hate playing together and you spend 40, 50 hours a week online practicing, probably not a good thing, probably not a good environment to be in. And again, without knowing the inner workings of NAVI, they just strike me as a team who don't necessarily like playing Counter-Strike with each other, which means that they are going to be inconsistent, which means we don't get the best out of each individual consistently as well. For me, for my money, I want to blow up the team. I want to see Alexi B go somewhere else, create a new project that would be interesting, send Alexi B back to G2, free up Hunter for the in-game leading duels, see how that's going to work out. Send Kerrigan to NAVI, let him work with Blade. Wouldn't it be cool if Kerrigan just once in his career had a coach next to him that wasn't just a guy who said, yes, do that, Kerrigan. Yes, I agree. Yes, we should sign that. Maybe have a guy who's challenging Kerrigan, the way he thinks about counter. Like, there's so many prospects in merging FaZe and NAVI, and I know there's contracts and it's probably wishful thinking, but for now, I've lost faith in NAVI. They'll be fine. They'll be a top 5, 6, 7 team. Maybe they'll make a semifinal occasionally, but them contending for a trophy or winning a trophy, I don't really see it at the moment.
Oh, well, Well, actually, first thing I have to say is this message is sponsored by Raycon. And, well, we've got so many podcasts here at Last Free Nation. We obviously have Talking Counter, which you can hear more of Thorin and Pimp on. You have...
That's counterpoints. Definitely counterpoints.
Oh, my God. Why am I saying that? My bad. Counterpoints, of course. We have counterpoints with you guys. We have Hot Take Point Made, where you can... really just kind of ask yourself, do you want to flip a coin whether you want to be sane at the end of the day or not? I mean, that's why you got Kasad on the show. And then you have this, Snake and Banter. And with all of that great content, you're going to want to hear all of that great content. So thankfully, we are sponsored by Raycon, and you can go to their website at buyraycon.com/snakeopen in order to get 15% off their everyday classic earbuds. They also have the open back earbuds as well. They got a couple different types that can fit however it is that you want to listen to your CS content, elite CS content, by the way. And these earbuds have 8 hours of playtime on their own on a single charge. They have 36 hours total, including the case. Every minute you charge, you get 5 minutes back. I mean, I feel like if you are just struggling, you're gonna go out the house, you want to make sure you can listen to your podcast. You don't want something that's dead or that you have no juice on. So just throw it in there for a few minutes as you're tying your shoes, and lo and behold, you can listen to at least all of the ugly points on your walk. So get these ones today. Go to buyraycon.com/snakeopen to get 15% off. Listen to all of the podcasts we have here, not Talking Counterpoints. That is. So check them out. And thanks, Raycon, for sponsoring.
There was technically an episode of Talking Counter with me, with Pimp, and with Mauisnake separately, but it just has no connection to the FM network. That's all. Even though, by the way, I would be fine if they wanted to join, but whatever, they're doing their own thing. Listen, my perspective on other people, if they refuse to join me, was portrayed by the character Ivan Drago in the movie Rocky IV. If they die, they die. So there you go. You had your choice to join me and have eternal life. You chose to live in hell, then you enjoy hell. So, Pimp, what is good? What's good at the moment?
Oh, good. I think the tournament circuit is good. I love that we're getting vibes. At least for me, I'm getting vibes back to 2018, 2019, where we have a tournament circuit where not all the same teams are showing up at all the same tournaments. I even dream of a circuit, and I think we're going to get that next year in 2017, 27, where Basically, there'll be tournaments where you send one pack of teams to one tournament, you send another pack of teams to another tournament. Then, let's say, the dominant teams at the time is Furia and Vitality. Furia win the tournament over here, Vitality is winning the tournament over here, and then you have to meet up, in Cologne to find out who's actually the better team. I think the fact that we have more TOs, the fact that we have more tournaments, and the fact that there now is an ability for teams to skip out on tournaments, to structure the way they attend tournaments, to maybe, structure their way of living. When I hear your kinder going out and saying the tournament circuit or structure right now is dog shit or whatever, all I'm thinking is, why don't you just structure it in a way where you don't feel it's dog shit? If you're Furia, do you really need to attend every single tournament? Maybe there's incentives in terms of prize money and the whole, ESL system, blast system, you name it. But at the end of the day, if you feel that that's too much to handle, then, put a foot down and say, we're not going to play, 19 tournaments a year. We're going to select a few tournaments. We're going to skip a few tournaments, etc., etc. I think it's great. I think we get to see more of the up-and-coming teams. We get more of the cool storylines of a team like Foot, of a team like PARIVISION, all that kind of stuff, where they have actual, proper, skilled, good tournaments where they can showcase themselves at LAN in a competitive environment where there's no asterisks to it. It's not just an online qualifier into an online CCT tournament, etc., etc. So maybe it's just a personal opinion, but I liked it way better back in 17, 18, 19, pre-COVID, when there was tournaments overlapping, where teams could skip out on tournaments, where you'd see, the best team at the time, Astralis, go to one team tournament, and then NAVI, being the second best, going to another tournament, and then you'd look forward to when they finally met, at a bigger tournament. To me, that's great. There's so many opportunities, there's so many tournaments, and at the end of the day, I can't help to feel that if the players or if the organizations are complaining about that there's too many tournaments, how about you grow a pair of balls and skip some of them, maybe say no to some of the money, and then, live a happy life.
Finding the work-life balance is something that is going to be consistently be a struggle for these guys. Yeah, the vitality of the, I don't mean to use that for the team, but the vitality of the tournament circuit it's teaming right now. I mean, there's so many different operators that all have their strengths and weaknesses. The variety is something that I'm really thrilled about, because the product is just different enough, and I feel like if some TOs got what they wanted and had a monopoly, God, it would feel really stale. I mean, it would really be up to them to try to just make sure that they inject new life into every consecutive tournament. And I feel like it would have, in a way, I think some people think, I've heard this before, that because there's so many tournaments, it kind of waters down the competition. I think if there was just one TO that ran 7 tournaments a year only, and it was only that TO, or then that would water down the feeling of watching all of these events. So I'm glad that we have, I'm not sure about what's flowing in terms of the lifeblood of all of these TOs like ESL Blast and PGL, but I'm glad that I see them all seemingly doing decently enough that they can run this many events. And I'm glad we're going to get kind of what you wish, that we're going to get Atlanta, I think, running at the same time concurrently with Astana. And those are both darn big tournaments. I think upwards of 500K in prize pool, I'm pretty sure, for both of those tournaments. I think Astana is like $1 million if you include the club share, but maybe I gotta look this up. I thought PGL moved to something where it was like the amount of prize money doesn't show on Liquipedia anymore because half of it goes to club fees. Nice. But either way, it doesn't really matter that much. It's just that you have 2 top tier events that are running at the same time. And so that was always one of my favorite things in early Counter-Strike, 2019 and prior, that you could essentially flip the channel on a game that you don't like. You could flip it to another one, see what's going on with that tournament. And I think that at the end of the day, the real winner is the viewer. And I feel like that's kind of who we should be catering towards at a strong level, that we should just make sure that they have options for what they can watch. And also, I think that selfishly, of course, I like when there's more gigs going on at the same time, because that means that broadcast talent get to eat. I think that you'll probably see for Astana and Dallas, a nice group of talent all working at the same time, that otherwise somebody usually is out of a gig. So I like it on a very selfish level, and I also like it on a more generous level to the fans at home.
I'm going to agree and disagree because I'm Thorin. Check out my Pokemon card. Those would be my abilities and my aura effect. Here's the reason why. I totally disagree with Pimp on this level, that he wants to have like big tournaments where like some teams don't go. First of all, homies, you both work for PGL. You were loving those PGLs about all the top teams? Well, you fucking hated them. What you mean selectively is you just want very specific ones that you just set up a whole scenario there, and then this one goes to this one and wins. All right, how about if they don't win, mate? How about if Fury goes to one, they come fourth?
That's the start.
And then that's shit, mate. I want it to be like Formula One and tennis, where every big tournament has all the best players in, and we find out at every tournament who the best is. And then you know what? If you're Furia and you only would have won because you went to the tournament without vitality, I don't think that's good. I think that's fucking whack. You get a fake trophy. Guess what? Some of them did win fake trophies last year. Some of them got to go, I won a trophy. I went, let me look at the team list. Yeah, you didn't win a trophy there, mate. You won the fucking eating contest at the kids' table. You weren't at the fucking big dog table where you have to eat that giant pizza in 15 minutes or it's not free.
Define a big tournament for me then.
Yeah, that tournament that has the best teams in the world. There you go. That's very quick, wasn't it, Pimp? Very quick.
That could be 12 tournaments a year. That could be 5 tournaments a year.
And then you add in extra details. You add in the prestige element of the massive arena and the stage and all this of it. Another thing you didn't do is specify which tournaments they'd skip. Here's why I don't like it that way, but I do like the tournament circuit, so I agree with you overall, is I actually think, first of all, some teams will skip anyway. Like, by the way, certain Russian teams almost have to skip some events. Like, they just can't get the visa days and be in the Schengen area that long. So you're going to get skips anyway. I also think, actually, the most logical skip is either your team's a bit burned out because maybe you've already got your VRS points for the major, but you had too many tournaments in a row waiting to the final. That's a good angle to skip one later in the season. Or the other angle would be, especially for teams, South American teams, North American teams, Russian teams, Asian team, how about just skip an event and instead go to one in your region? That's also a cool angle, right? If there's like an IM in North America, maybe you do that one instead of like one in the middle of fucking Eastern Europe. Maybe if you're from Asia, you just skip one of the events in South America or something and you do this one elsewhere. I think that's also fine, because I'll just throw this out there. When I see pro players complain about that, they don't mean, I wish it was possible to skip events. They mean, like an entitled child, I just don't want there to be big events that have all great prize money and prestige and stuff, but that I have to go to, but then I don't feel like going to it, so just cancel the whole event. It's actually what talent, some of my literal friends in esports used to say publicly, and I used to tell them behind the scenes, I think you're a fucking idiot, mate. They would go, there's too many events for us to work as talent, and it's like, what a disgraceful statement. No, what you mean is you won't turn one down, but then you don't want someone to get your spot at that event you turned down and then go and have an awesome job and take your job. You want there just be no event. You want it to be that when you don't feel like working for a month, there are no events that month. Well, fucking hell. All right, little Lord Fauntleroy, that's not the way the world works, is it? You're welcome at any point in time to negotiate your contract, to figure out the VRS points, or to just choose, I'll do 3 out of your 4 events, but I want to skip this one. Be a big boy. Check if you got a pair of nuts between your legs and go and negotiate that. Don't just cry in public like a little, please. Like, that's not how things work. Then anyway, I actually think one of the cool things is that the circuit is better this year because of VRS points. Does everyone want to know? Because, you know, I praised them. Turns out I was wrong. I was like, I'm glad finally all the top teams are going to attend, except for Spirit, because they have their own reasons. All the top teams are going to attend PGL Cluj Poker. Finally, a PGL with all the top teams. Instantly got the DM from someone more knowledgeable. Thorin, that's just because if you look at how VRS works, they basically have to play that tournament. Oh, okay. That means we solved the problem. All Valve had to do was actually figure out the calendar so that you couldn't just skip all those events or you'd carry a big penalty. If there's a big penalty, by the way, you skip if you want, mate. Again, it's your team, your life. You'll suffer the consequences. You'll maybe be in stage 2 of the major and stage 3. I'm fine with that totally. And the reason I do, though, Pimp, want more events and want more events where it's not all the top teams, but that naturally will happen if it's a smaller event, less of the top team. By the way, when there's less top teams, some other teams will choose to go on that event. They'll have a chance. One of the reasons I do want that is because also at the moment with the VRS system, you have to invite the top X amount of teams anyway. If you take out some of the middle, let's say like the 5th, the 9th, the 13th and the 18th team don't go, all of a sudden we might have teams that we don't get to see at the VRS lands except rarely, except the playing tournament. We might get to see BC Game. We might get to see the new Legacy lineup. We might get to see NIP. It's also cool to see those teams on land. So overall, I agree. I just think, as usual, people have their own way of describing what they agree with.
I think that's fair enough. For me, I just want to clarify because I also do want the best teams at the biggest events, but I don't want to see 12 events a year where all the best teams are at. I would love to see, the lead up to, let's say, Cologne, let's say up to the major, that, a certain portion of the top teams were at one tournament and a certain portion.
If you mean specifically like one tournament before, you want a little bit of a break. That's fair enough.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't want top teams to skip Cologne or skip Krakow or skip, what we could.
Because I just get nervous, Pimp, because I come from League of Legends as well. Where in League of Legends, you just sit in separate regions for like 6 months and then wait to play
fuck
one
that,
time,
fuck
you know. So you can go too far the other way too.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But just once in a while, just
all right.
split up,
All right, I'll give you once in a while.
Different directions. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I like it. I think it was something that probably began as cope, if I'm being honest, about just like, oh, the best teams aren't here. Why am I even going to watch this? But then I think that's also why we work in this sort of space, is that honestly, I feel like those tournaments kind of create their own new narratives. I mean, it kind of is what gave us some reason to believe in the Maus roster. Because imagine Cluj last year doesn't even happen, and that Maus team just gets absolutely smurfed on by a Vitality that's in red hot form, or another team like a Falcons team, or I guess they weren't around then. And then we never get to say that they won or that they even started with a good result that made us believe in them and kind of showed that they were the best of the rest. But I'm glad that we have these tournaments where, yeah, I mean, it's nice. It sometimes is nice to see that the Mongols lift a trophy or a Furia lift a trophy to kind of show they're on the map, to make us to give us any sort of faith or belief that they're not just a team that's going to get bounced as soon as they hit the quarterfinals.
Right. What is your good point, Maui?
Yeah, mine is that it kind of runs in contrast to the biggest topic about Krakow for us lately, which is the analyst desk. But that's not the point. Not talking about that right now. I'm just gonna say in general, I feel like I don't do this very often, but I just kind of thought that it was something I considered when listening to the broadcast frequently. Is that good point? Is simply I think SPUNJ is doing a great job. I think SPUNJ is doing a really good job as a color commentator in the space right now. That he clearly is extremely tapped in to the game. I mean, I think that it goes without saying that I really appreciate the other duos in the space, Scrawny Launders and Harry and Hugo. I just have endless hours of entertainment listening to these guys. But when it comes to just pure hard CS, I think it's almost hard to debate that anybody is keeping their nose to the grindstone in the same kind of way that Chad is, when it comes to knowing the intricacies of all of the teams that are playing, when he can highlight new smokes that are entering the meta, new ways that teams are playing out, macro situations, that he consistently is relying on the game. I'd say, not relying is not the best word actually, but just he's highlighting aspects of the game as a commentator, which I think we as a community are extremely privileged to have a guy who has as much in-depth knowledge of CS as he does, to just be able to just hear what he's saying and thinking about, oh, this team's running this, they didn't run this last time. It's almost like, the best aspects of an analyst desk, but you get to hear it so frequently. And I get why a lot of analysts want to pivot into the color commentary role, because you get so much space to work with. But I feel like Chad actually uses it to the fullest effect. I don't know how he could even possibly cram in all that much more information regarding the teams when he seems so concentrated and dialed in on what all of them are doing. So a rare shout out to just another broadcast talent that I think is absolutely crushing it.
Yeah, I think that's hard to disagree with. I also think that he's by far the best in that aspect. If you do want to crown a king of that, it's the most insightful commentary to listen to. I like the idea that we know what we talk about, Maui, most of the time, but I learn a lot when I listen to a chatcast. I learn a lot when I listen to one of his podcasts. I learn a lot when I, in general, just follow his Twitter, his extra. You can see how dialed in he is on all the new updates and all the minutiae and all the small things. And, most of the time I'm like scrolling past my feed, whenever he turns on, I'm like, yeah, that's a minor detail, or yeah, that's a minor detail, but it all adds up, when he then brings that into the cast and you present that, as you said, Maui, where you have sometimes games that allows you a lot of that downtime in order to actually explain what you would do on a disc segment, etc., etc. You get the best of both worlds, and I feel like I learn a lot when I listen to a SPUNJ and Alex cast, for that matter. And I also do think the combination of the two is fantastic, because Alex is different, way different, and that just goes to speak, as you also said, that I feel like Harry and Hugo is a complete different approach to Counter-Strike, and I have a tough time saying one is better than the other. But I think from my egotistical point of view, in terms of I love to learn, I love to get smarter. I also do very much agree that I feel like Chad he's done this for years, to be honest, but I feel like he's not slowing down, he's not stagnating. If anything, he's keeping up his pace, his level, and he's still getting better. And I think for a guy who's been doing the job that he's been doing now, obviously color commentating is it's not new for him. It's been 4 or 5 years or whatnot, but he's been in broadcast for 10 years now. I think the fact that you in year 11, year 10 is still getting better at the job is one of the best qualities you can ever put, and one of the best compliments you can ever give to anyone.
I actually think SPUNJ is the best in all of broadcast talent in Counter-Strike. Like, I think if I had to pick someone to put forwards against all the other esports, this is the person I would pick relative to their role, but the whole scene as well. Because I actually do think, first of all, you nailed it. He is easily the most, like, he's the only colour commentator I'm aware of who doesn't just go off games they're watching and then like a little bit of research. You can tell he like messages people. And by the way, he also has like an insane ability to read all the fucking threads and all the forum shit that's out there. And he just knows completely, like his fingers on the pulse of what's happening for pros, for coaches, for the game, for the meta. He plays it a fuck ton too. You know, by the way, here's a mad underrated thing in talent work. After all those years in talent work, he loves the fucking game authentically, and that translates constantly. Look, I could actually say some of those things I don't think Launders is as good at, but on the love one, Launders gets 100%. That's one of the reasons I love that he still gets to do all the big events. He is someone who I do think really cares about Counter-Strike and likes to watch the best teams play. I can tell you there's some really brilliant broadcast talent where they're sort of a bit over some of it, or it depends if it's a major or if there's a huge crowd, etc. Some of them, if it's a normal event, it's just another day at the office ending in a Y for them. So not only do I think SPUNJ is the best, and also I'll just put it this way, he's actually a goated broadcast figure at this point in time, because this guy was, in my opinion, the best analyst. He is the best caster / colour commentator, and he could go and choose to do either of them tomorrow and still be the best. Like, that's fucking unreal. There's never been a person like that. I don't give a fuck if you guys go and become commentators tomorrow. I doubt you'll become the best colour commentator, mate. It'll be very, very, very hard. There's a different style to analysis, etc. You might have done something. You just won't. You just won't, mate. You also need, like, natural qualities, luck, charisma. He has it all as well, but he's a very amiable person to listen to. He can say critique that doesn't make you feel offended, doesn't make anyone go, even though he might actually be critiquing someone and pointing out what they've done wrong. I'll even go one further. This will hurt everyone's feelings, because if you're a pleb, you think all I just said at the beginning was wrong there. No, Thorin. Machine is the best in esports and catcher. No, because here's the thing, you've only heard him with fucking SPUNJ, haven't you? Beyond the odd TriCast and the shitty ESL games that don't count. In that casting duo, I think Machine might be the best play-by-play, but I think in that duo, it is like 75% or 60% Chad. It's not fucking Machine. Because one thing Machine does well is he mirrors a lot of Chad's really great takes and insightful things he said, and things he said in past maps and things he said in past games. And that actually makes you, as a player, think that Machine is some like super high-level thinker. It's not even his job. It's not his job at all to do. All I'm going to say is this: if I could go back in a time machine, you never get to see him cast with Chad, and I'd just give him Hugo. I'd just give him Moses. By the way, I think Moses is excellent. Given these people, you wouldn't think the same way of Machine, in my opinion. I think that Chad fills in around him, does his part. Some of it's reflected through Machine. I think it's the duo that's mega, but I actually think Chad is the most important part. Edgy take, right? And then I'll tell you one last thing. Since I said he actually authentically loves the game, he's not the caster either, privately or publicly, doing that thing of like, this would probably be my last year, or where's the scene going? He'll just keep doing it until like either he literally doesn't like Counter-Strike anymore, in which case I think he'll quit the next day, or the scene just doesn't exist. Like, he's one of those people I also don't think's here for the fame or the money or the like, I get to be important and talk on the mic. If you only knew how many fucking people in broadcast talent, guys, do have some of those things that are their demons, that are the sort of downside. So I think he kills it, mate. Yeah, he's mega. Great, good point. I think we all agree. Okay, I have a good point. This can also be a brief one because it's just a small sample size. But I'll tell you what, if I critique someone and you absolutely blow me away, I've got to give you the fucking props. I'm going to say my good is Soulfly from Aurora. Holy fucking shit. I thought that was going to be a downgrade, by the way. And I'll tell you what, it's only on LAN, boys, 7 maps. But are you ready? I'm going to give you the stat that's going to blow your mind. So on LAN, he has a 1.19 rating. Only 7 maps though, right? Well, all 7 of them are against top 5 teams because he played against Falcons, Maus, and fucking Vitality. By the way, there's your fucking LAN debut. Oh yeah, we go straight against Falcons to begin with, mate, and then into Maus, and then Vitality to finish it off. And then after that, you have a 1.19 rating. Fucking 10 out of 10. Like, but you pass with flying colours. So far, by the way, in the shortest time possible, move of the season. It's all there. Like, I was critical. Maybe it all falls apart and I end up being right. But right now, what a fucking signing. I also thought in that team, there's no way he has space to be the player he was in the other team. How's he going to make them better squad? All this. So far, this has been one of the better signings I've seen.
Yeah, I think that's tough to disagree with. I am also surprised that he's doing that well, to be completely honest. I think we weren't necessarily, found on him from the online portion in Blast, I think. But he's been doing well. And as you said, I think the context is that the stats, it's against Vitality, it's against Maus, it's against Falcons in a lot of close games as well. You know, the Vitality map that went, was it 4 overtimes or something like that? You had a couple of close maps against versus Falcons. So I feel like it's not streaky games, you know. When the sample size is only 7 maps or 8 maps, as you said,
absolutely,
it's easy to be like, okay, that's a small sample size. But when the context of the game is that one of the maps were technically 2 maps, you know, so now you bump it up to 8, and a couple of the games were, I think, 23 rounds and 24 rounds. Well, all of a sudden you have a lot of data to look at, you know. So there's a difference between 8 maps that wasn't close, where you're playing shitters, and 8 maps where, as you said, you're playing the best teams in the world, and you're actually going into overtime, you're losing a couple of the maps, etc. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't really put much thought into Soulfly just yet. I'm curious to see how he's going to do today against Furia as we're recording this. I think that's a big test on a big stage, but for now, intriguing. Let's put it that way.
Now, obviously, go on. Sorry, you didn't do a point. Go on.
Well, I'm not jumping on the Soulfly train just yet. I just feel like, I don't know. I guess it is really impressive the way that he was able to play so far. I think that at the beginning, watching Jota, I felt something kind of similar, where I was really, really excited about how good he looked. And so I don't know if I want to, but then he kind of tapered off. And I feel like then he started having to do stuff that was so selfless, so consistently. So he kind of got beaten down. He kind of got worn down in the system, that the Madger system that just kind of makes you feel like you're worse than who you are as a player. And I just think that Soulfly still kind of has he's in the honeymoon phase of this right now. And I think that you're gonna feel good. You're gonna play pretty well. You're gonna try to show everybody what you've got. The bounty event wasn't really that impressive for me for him, but yes, it's a great bounce back here at Krakow. I would say that the regression to the mean may be a little bit higher than Jota, and if that's the case, if the entire time that he's on Aurora, he's just a smidgen better than Jota, I already think that's good. But I'm not gonna crown this guy anytime soon.
Listen, even if it's the honeymoon phase, this guy's fucking good. You're not leaving the hotel room. You're ordering in whipped cream and strawberries and chocolate sauce. Listen, Maui, if I've told you once, I've told you a million times, good dick is good dick. And you know what, right now, this guy's fucking, all right? All right?
Okay.
And
I thought this was going to be an ad read or something, but it just ends on that. It's just the punchline's good dick is good dick. All right.
Am I right? Am I right? Yeah. Anyway.
Where is the lie? Lie?
Yeah. Anyway, here's the thing. In my good point, technically, I picked something I was wrong about, which does go against my usual life philosophy, also the shared philosophy of our sponsor Prize Picks, which is it's good to be right. And actually, I get paid whether I'm right or wrong, as some fans no doubt know. But at Prize Picks, if you're right, you can get paid. So obviously, right now, you're thinking football season's over. No. There's not only one last game. It's the big game, isn't it? So this week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live in the app now. Drake May of the Patriots just needs 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. So we're going to assume he gets 1 passing yard if you know anything about that sport. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. If you didn't know, Prize Picks is really easy to play with. You just pick between 2 and 5 of their projected stats, thingamajigs for each player. And then what you do is you just pick more or less, really simple to do. So, for example, if it was in basketball, you might pick right now someone like SGA, and you'd pick more points, and he's going to make more threes or whatever because you think he's going to have a great, or Luca, etc. You pick Wemby. You pick who you are. Also, you can stack players. So if you are like a massive Wemby fan, you could take him in points, you could take him in rebounds, you could take him in blocks. Depends what they have offered as the stats projections. And they have a feature called early payouts, where if your player gets off to a hot start, you can actually cash out before the game's even over. Now, here's how you can also get something extra when playing at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code SNAKE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code SNAKE to get $50 in lineups after you play just your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Okay, now we move to the section which is bad. So Pimp, what's bad?
Well, I think as good as VIS is, as it brings a lot of good stuff, let's put it that way. I'm a big fan of VIS, but I also do think it creates a barrier from casual fans to follow Counter-Strike and understand the competitive circuit. And I think that's the one bad thing about VRS, and I don't know how to fix it, and I would like to discuss it or at least hear your take on it. But I have a lot of friends who obviously follow Counter-Strike as casuals. I have a lot of friends who keep asking me, about that team. And it's the classic. I don't know if you ever...
And you're like, Glaive, you're a coach now, just fucking watch the games. Oh, whatever. Sorry, my bad. Keep going.
There you go. Yeah, but I have friends who's like, normally they follow, the bigger tournaments.
Yeah,
so
of course.
They check in, every third month, whatnot. And then I tell them, okay, so who's the good team now? And say, Vitality are winning. Then they say, who's the good team now? I say, Fury is winning everything. And they're like, okay, cool. Why does it change that much? And then I explain them about VRS, how you go, and all of them are like, what? What the fuck is that? It's too complicated. And it creates, at least for my friends and from my circuit and from my take, and I think that's one of the things that we underestimate the most, and it's something that I wanna die on. I want to die on a hill, and I know that the hardcore Reddit users and the HLTV forum experts, etc., they don't really get the concept. But let me try to explain it quickly right here. When we have 500,000 viewers on a big grand final at a big game, maybe, let's say, 10-15% of those viewers understand Counter-Strike at a high level, or understands truly what we can deliver on an analysis desk. 80% of the viewers, or 85% of the viewers, they're casuals. They tune in for the final. They tune in once or twice a month. They have fun watching casual Counter-Strike, and they want to see the pros duke it out. If we then only cater what we say on a desk to the hardcore fans, there will be 80% of the people being like, what the fuck is going on right here? So you have to find a balance where you cater to everyone at the same time. And obviously the diehard nerds are then, Pimp doesn't know what he speaks about, or he's always so casual, or he always talks like he doesn't know anything about it. No, it's deliberate, you fucking moron. It's deliberate to try to make sure everyone understands what's going on. But my issue with VRS is I cannot find a way to do that to engage the casuals. I try to understand VRS. I follow some of these Twitter, brains that you've been encountering with as well, Duncan, who explains to you that this is the reason why everyone is going to PGL Cluj. This is the reason why HLTV's predictor is wrong, that you get attached more points after the tournament, prize money comes in. Yeah, there's so many aspects to it, but I almost feel that no matter how much time I spend trying to understand VRS, and I get it to a certain degree now, I think I'm not an expert, but I cannot convey that to my friends. I cannot convey that to casual viewers. And that creates a barrier for them to fully understand what's going on within the circuit. And then that creates a barrier for me to pick that up as a storyline when I then try to cater to the 80% that's following the tournaments that I'm, broadcasting to a point where they don't necessarily understand Counter-Strike the same way I do. And I don't know what the fix is for it. And yeah, it frustrates me. It frustrates me that something that is doing so many good things to the scene is so hard to... It's so hard to explain for people. That annoys me.
I just don't think we need to jam VRS down the throats of fans on live broadcasts, which has been a conversation in production meetings with various people, TOs. Doesn't matter especially when it comes to earlier in the season. I just think we as people that work on the broadcast and people that are just constantly terminally online with this stuff, we're in the hardcore bubble is what I'd call it, and it's just that we see all the VRS nerds that are just kind of valuable service that they do, however one that is entirely unsexy. For example, I don't think I'll even mention once on the desk at Cluj that the reason that more teams showed up for this event was because it has strong implications in the VRS circuit. It's just the least sexy way to present that this is an elite tournament now with the best teams in the world, barring Spirit, of course, who for some reason didn't get the memo that everybody was going to this. But for me, earlier in the season and even later, to me, it's just relevant for teams that are on the bubble. Teams I think BC Game has enough of a storyline to go on itself that you could just bring up the simple aspect and electronic, whatever. It doesn't matter. You could pick from so many that the last thing I probably really want to talk about with BC Game is their VRS position, which will then influence their invites to further tournaments. It's more the team, if I'm covering a game say, what's a hardcore team that not many people are probably going to watch unless they're a super CS big fan? I guess a Gamer Legion, like the casual fan is not usually really watching a Gamer Legion type team. And if Gamer Legion, for example, is say the 20th ranked European team, then yeah, it might make it into my how I frame the game ahead of them, because there's only so many storylines to grab on for Gamer Legion. I'm never going to pin them as a championship favorite, but I will say that, hey, this is an extremely relevant game because if they lose this, the invites for X event are coming out next week, and this can be the difference maker for them having a tier 1 opportunity or even falling through the cracks into tier 2. So get your shit together in this one in particular. I mean, that's a way to build it up, but I'm not going to be like, I mean, hey, this is for the difference between stage 1 and stage 2 of or stage 2 and stage 3 of a major invite, and we're still in January. Like, it's just so far away from that being a relevant talking point for me that I would probably be more I just would be a little bit more hesitant to bring that up. But come crunch time, like when that Fragadelphia was make or break for every team, then it's like the most hyper relevant point to that tournament.
I think just to jump in, Duncan, before you maybe give your take, that's my issue with it, because I feel like I agree. I think it's very easy to selectively, choose when VIS is relevant and when it's not. And it's not that we have to discuss VIS at every single tournament, but it does create at least for me, the fact that we don't really condition the viewers to then, when we hit the point, the last tournament before the major cutoff or whatnot, then all the TOs want us to talk about is the VIS implication, because it is a big story. And now it makes this tournament the most important thing in the world. But if we don't condition the viewers from the beginning of the season to even, like, if we have to by April talk about VIS for the first time and then explain what is VIS, for the first time, then we kind of miss a bit of that, lead up and build up to that point, I feel. And that's where the discrepancy is becoming too big, in the sense that I agree we could theoretically ignore VIS for a big part of the season, or for a lot of the games where it doesn't really matter whether you go stage 3 or stage 2. But for some of the teams, obviously more permanent at all the events. But at the end of the day, then when it comes crunch time, then it's very hard to then be like, okay, now VIS means the world. Now it's everything. And that's what I've experienced, at least from some of my friends that tunes in to watch the broadcast. They're like, what is VIS? Why have you never spoken about that before? And they watch my work regularly, but they never really heard me speak about it, or they don't understand the concept. So when we then have to hone in on, now it's everything, for Gamer Legion. Now this VIS means X, Y, Z, yada, yada. People are like, what the fuck is even VIS, and why does it matter? So I feel like, I don't know, it's just a selfishly point, in a sense that I just need a way of conveying that to make my friends, which I base my problem on right here, informed, in a sense that they find it interesting to follow that storyline when it matters. And I think that's the bad thing about VIS, that it is so complicated that not even HLTV's predictor is right half the time. Not even the people who are self-proclaimed expert fully understand what they're saying half the time. I think when you have a system like that, it's very hard for us to use it proactively. And then, as you said, Maui, then it comes down to, okay, Gamer Legion, they're playing this game, it's do or die time. There's a great likelihood they won't make the major if they lose this game, but we can't really say anything definitively.
Yeah, not definitively, yeah.
Exactly. Even though that we want to, and even though that, again, the TOs, they want to say that, because if we can say that if Gamer Legion lose this game, they won't make the major. Like, that's great. That goes well on social media. That's a great way of acquiring 10,000 more viewers to come in and watch this game-breaking game. But we can't say that because we don't fucking know. And to me, that's bad, selfishly at least.
See, to me, the problem here, obviously, it's not my fault your friends are all fucking noobs. Why even you make me sick. Like, you've got friends that don't even know loads about Counter-Strike. You've changed, mate. You know what I mean? What the fuck are you doing with your lives? Get some hardcore nerds in there. They're not even watching Gamer Legion. What are you doing with your lives? You've got families and fucking jobs and stuff, you fucking losers. Anyway, with that said, I actually do agree, because here's the problem. But I would put it as ugly, not bad. And the reason why it's ugly, not bad, is because I think the output of the VRS system is amazing. Like, actually, it's done all the things it promised it would. It's actually streamlined all the things I wanted. The ugly part is this. I don't think it is possible to understand it. This is why I know CS fans are not just stupid. People can have low intelligence. They're actually ignorant. Because ignorance is when you refuse to learn. You refuse to acknowledge you don't know what you're talking about. Because you could, from day one that they released VRS, they had that GitHub link. You can go to it right now. You can see how the formula works. You can see how the weighting balance. Do you know why you don't click that? Because, one, you don't click anything. You don't even read news. You just read headlines. You hear something, so someone says, no one reads facts, no one reads, no one thinks. But even worse, when you click it, it's really complicated. It isn't just X plus Y equals Z. It's such a complicated formula with weighting components and decay and things like that essentially it achieves what nobody in CS appears to be able to do, which is think beyond one factor. It has to be for you, number high, number bad, good. Whereas what this is it's like, yes, but the number is affected by this third factor. And then also that's informed by a fourth and a fifth factor. But if you have enough of the other factor, then it doesn't matter. And that's just how the system works. It has to be complicated to take into account all these different tournaments, all these different levels of competition, all these different teams in the event, etc. And so I agree, the messaging is really difficult. I actually don't know how you get around it. Like, I even follow Jesper Larson 222 on Twitter, and half the time I just retweet it and go, okay, I sort of understand that, but I still don't really quite understand how that works, and why is it that this team that was at a LAN that doesn't have any of the good teams is getting more points than this team that's at a LAN with some good teams and they did almost as good. Like, I can't, it's not intuitive, put it that way. One of the big problems as well is everyone is pretending they know how it works, whereas as far as I can tell, almost no one does. I'll give you an example. BC Game signed this core called SAW, right? And everyone is saying stuff like bad move. I think Striker called it worst roster move of the season on HLTV Confirm. So if you're going to make a statement like that, right, then when tournaments happen, and BC Game does a pretty decent job actually at Krakow, you wouldn't expect them to even get the wins they get here. Then the question's going to become from fans in every talk show, should they make a roster move, right? The question then is this: does Striker and does anyone else out there know when they can make the roster move? Do you know when they're allowed to remove one of the SAW players to not lose the VRS points? Was it already? I've heard some people say once you play 5 LAN matches, then you can remove one. Is that even true? Does anyone even know these things? Does anyone know? Or are we just taking VRS as like, computer says, and then we just hope it works that way, and then we just go, I hope maybe the computer says this next time. So that's bad. Then the whole LAN thing. Once I explained to people, the reason teams go to small LANs is because you can stack wins that way. Everyone went, yeah, I'm not listening to the rest, Thorin. Right, guys, all you do is go to as many small shit lands as you can, and you just get wins and you qualify for it. That's not true. It's like an actual limited amount, and you get like, I think, what's it, like 5 wins or something you want to count, and it's almost like your last 5 or something. It's some shit like that, right? It's actually really complicated, even on the land wins. You can't just go to lands. You actually also have to do other things as well. Then also, there's lastly the thing you're saying about qualifying to the major. The most important thing about VRS is, will this stop someone getting invited to the next tournament or qualifying to the major? Just mute the mic when you do that, mate. It's really easy. You're not talking right now. Just mute the mic and then you can type all you want. So does it make me not get the invite to the next tournament, or has this spoiled my chance to be in stage 1 or stage 2 of the major? That's the real thing you want to say on the broadcast, as you guys say. The problem is you don't really want to do what people at HLTV with that meter think you want to do, which is they think you want to talk about every match like, oh my God, it's 11-11, and if they lose this map, they lose 14 VRS points, which means they'll go to 26. No one wants that. Yeah, I'm with you. That is terrible for everyone. But I agree. I think, look, I don't think VRS itself is bad. I do think it is almost impossible for a normal human to understand, though. Like, to actually plug all the shit into that formula is really complicated. It's not something you can intuitively look at, or you can get a sense of like, well, I know they're playing a team that's like pretty good and they've just beaten them, so they'll probably get. You can't do like quick maths on this one. It's actually a really specific formula. It's really difficult to understand, unfortunately.
But maybe that's the conclusion we then have to come to as we learn about it, because I feel like, as Maui said as well, it's not necessarily being pushed by TOs, but it's being pushed by people who obviously want it to be, to be more important, you know. And maybe we just have to accept the fact that it can't be conveyed in a way that makes sense to everyone. And that's kind of my point as well, because I've given up, you know. I used my friends as an example, but in general, as you said as well, when you read, you know, the Esper guys tweet, like it's so complicated even for us who is supposed to know more and supposed to do better, that we only maybe get 80% of it or 90% of it. So maybe the conclusion, at least for me, is that maybe it just shouldn't be a big thing, you know, in terms of how we present the games. Outside of the fact is that when we sometimes, you know, can get final confirmation that this is the do or die game, then we can obviously tap into it. But even doing that, you know, then as I said, we don't really condition viewers to all of a sudden be, now we're talking about it, you know, and then not touching it at all when we're not sure about it. So I feel like it's complicated in terms of the storytelling and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm curious to see how that involves, because I agree with you. I think regardless of how much time we spend trying to understand it, or regardless of the VRS system staying the same now for 2 or 3 years, I don't think the way of presenting it gets any easier, because it is just complicated as fuck from the bottom up.
All right, to you, Maui.
Yeah, I could get into mine. Mine is the just the fall off immediately, which is somewhat predictable, but I didn't think it was going to be this bad, of PARIVISION in the fall, you know, in Krakow. The fact that they weren't able to build on the result that they had at the bounty, and I feel like, I think the managing of expectations was extremely needed for this team, because I think I felt like the buzz around PARIVISION was that, okay, they finally did it, and that Jane was able to break through. But I just think that this is the reality check that a lot of PARIVISION people needed to have. Like, not saying the organization itself. Like, I actually don't think Jame and Dastan were delusional whatsoever that this was going to be continuing. They were going to continue with the success that they found at the first event of the year. I mean, in fact, actually, Dastan talked to us following the win at the bounty, and he was almost pleading with us, don't just hype us up needlessly. Like, do not just say we're going to be a championship team or that we have these sort of expectations now. Like, for us, making playoffs at Krakow is good. You know, he actually he went out of his way to even he actually just kind of walked into our green room and literally told us this, which was kind of a humorous interaction, but it was one that I feel like was nice to just get to understand the bearings of them. But I also think that the tier 1.5, tier 2 kind of person that watched so much PARIVISION last year thought probably, yes, like this is the everything's paying off for them, that this is the roster that in many ways felt like was kind of making the headway that they were in those kind of galaxy battle, land to land sort of tournaments. And now the snap back to reality is them at Krakow. I also just kind of feel like what's interesting about them is that they're kind of so hot and cold and kind of so matchup dependent. And that's kind of my point here, is that the bad point is that, to me, I don't think PARIVISION is going to have any, they're not going to lift any trophies for the rest of this season. And I feel like it's going to be extremely difficult for them to win any playoff games, because you could see when they played a team like Aurora at Krakow, they were able to do pretty well. Like they still have a really unique style that can throw people off, but as soon as teams really are able to download them and understand, like Navi is just the perfect type of team that says, okay, this is the style they play. Everybody just get your anti-strat hat on. You're not going to play the exact same Counter-Strike you play versus everybody. You just need to slightly tweak how you especially run your defenses against them. So them losing to Navi was one I thought it was just sort of like the regression of the mean that it was expected. But I also actually might go as far to say that I think the loss to Astralis was disappointing. And that's where I almost felt like, okay, now they finally encounter a bit of a hurdle with a Navi team that knows how to play around them. But to me, losing to Astralis, results-wise, I thought that was beneath them. So yeah, the bad point is what PARIVISION more or less showed at Krakow.
Yeah, I think we talked about it in Counterpoints as well, Duncan, where it's like, I think the expectation for PARIVISION, even after them winning the Blast Bounty, for me was just to try to stabilize around, 10th, 11th, 12th. I don't think they were necessarily a team that was going to win any trophy once again. I feel like it was the perfect storm during Blast Bounty as well, but I'm glad you brought it up here, Maui, that I think it's the loss to Astralis is disappointing. That's beneath them. That's beneath the level of Counter-Strike that I'd expect from PARIVISION. Outside of that, I'm not really too surprised, and I think you and I had that conversation as well, Maui, during Blast Bounty. It was a lot of, I wouldn't say gimmicky stuff, but it was like the classic James style where you would hammer the same bomb site 8 rounds in a row. And if you do that against a good team that is respecting you and is coming in well prepared for a tournament against you, you need to come up with something else. And I think they kind of felt that, during Krakow. They kind of felt that, okay, now we are a team that people take seriously enough to fully, properly anti-strat, and we probably do it on a bit of a deeper level compared to what you normally do when you're facing a team like PARIVISION, because you cannot prepare for all teams equally, regardless of what fan thinks. It's not like every coach or every team is sitting down and spending 4 hours equally on every single team they face. There's some teams that you dive into more. There's some teams that you're unfamiliar with that you probably spend a little less time on or a little more time on, etc., etc. And I think PARIVISION, if anything, put a target on their back with the wonderful performance at Blast Bounty that said, okay, now we're going to fully, properly prepare for PARIVISION. And once that kind of hit them, you also see the limitations of some of the individuals, some of the young players. I think Noda, who you said, Duncan, as well, probably should have been the MVP of Blast Bounty. I think he's the most vulnerable player within that lineup. I think he's by far the player that makes the most crazy mistakes. I think he's very immature in the way he moves around on the server from time to time. I think he cost a lot of rounds. I think he's probably the weak point of the lineup if I were to pick one of the weak points, but he's obviously a player that can learn from that and get better. But I think that's where they're at right now. They're still a very young roster, and they can still get significantly better. So if anything, it's bad to lose to Astralis, no doubt about that. But then again, Krakow is an event for elite tier teams, and I don't see PARIVISION being an elite tier team.
This is why, for me, it's a shame that Tech Girl only released the episode where me and King T go back and forth on PARIVISION after they'd already been eliminated. I'd have loved that to have come out before the tournament. So every dickhead could tell me I'm wrong. PARIVISION's going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be like a really competitive team. They might even win the event. And then they get banged out in last place at the main event of this one. Because, spoiler, I was actually fairly critical. Like, I thought that was like a life fucking, not even tournament, life game by Nota. Just had one best of 5. It was a 3-0. And like, if you don't know, guys, at that tournament, you had a 1.14 rating. In Krakow, he had a 0.82 rating. Like, that is an insane drop off, except the difference is his middle level isn't closer to the 1.14, it's more in the middle. So he's just not the player you guys think he is. He's not the next fucking Don Keisuke. Like, he's not even in that category, mate. It's not none of that shit. So I do give Jim credit for that win. Like, do think he used his piece as well. Then also, I'll just add this in there. One thing I've always said about Jim that holds me back from ever putting him in, but he doesn't even get to sit in the next room over and hear the words "GOAT conversation for IGL," is he's never in any team, no matter how good the teams were, ever had a really strong map pool. It's never existed. Someone prove me wrong. Go back in history and show me the time when any GM team ever had like 4 or 5 maps deep. They're killers. They can go all over the map pool. In fact, famously, I've always thought he's one of the weirdest IGLs ever who like never looks at that thing on HL TV. He'll just like veto into shit where he has the losing win rate on that map or the other team's amazing on that map and he wins using the GM style, not some like specialist map shit. So his team still has a really weak map pool. Like, if you don't know, at the Blast Bounty, he won all 3, I think it was all 3 games on Inferno. Every single time the other team picked it, by the way. Do you know what happened in Krakow? Not a single fucking sausage picked an Inferno. Because they all just went, oh, wait, this team that has like 2.5 maps, take one of the maps out. Then Jim himself got all those Mirage wins. He only chose to pick Mirage one time himself in this tournament. He's not even that good at vetoing himself, guys. So they've got a really weak map pool, in my opinion. Like, I don't know where, again, which map are they even a vague contender for best on? Tell me. Anyone know? No one does. Then you look at their players. Not a single one of their players is going to HLTV top 20. What are we even talking about? Like, it's not going to happen. The joke is if it was anyone, it would be Jim, because he plays out a baited style, which guarantees he gets decent numbers on CT side with the AWP. That's about it. So they're not even a bad team, by the way. What you have to do is embrace that they're supposed to be like a joker card. Like, what they're supposed to do, they're sort of like a slightly better version of what 3D Max is. They're there to take a team that has bad fundamentals or plays silly or doesn't know how to call on T-side and say, you're not allowed to win CS games if you do that. That's what I love about teams. I want them in the scene. I'm not hating on them at all. I think they've overperformed and James done a great job. But the people who really saw that result and went, wait, they beat Furia. In fact, I guess they will be a fucking top team. Like, you just don't know CS, mate. It's all good. Stick around, listen to the show, shut the fuck up, think about what I say. Maybe in a few months you'll know what you're talking about. There we go. Let's go on. Last point of the show is me. Pull up your stats, boys. You're going to need to confirm what I'm saying here. Now, I'm supposed to believe that last time at the major, I was being a prick by making it all about Jacob, right? True, I do think the broky one was a more relevant conversation because of broky's history, and broky should never have been back in phase because there's a reason everyone rejoiced when Simple with fuck all practice came back. The reason why the Jacob angle needs to be brought up again is this. He was fucking dog shit at this tournament. In fact, do you know, everyone was going, oh, but remember stage 2 and stage 3 of the major? I do. And then remember the playoffs? No, you don't remember the playoffs. In the playoffs, he won some pistol rounds. In most of the games, he was actually quite weak. But because he'd had a good stage 2 and stage 3 and the team won the playoff series, you all deleted that and told me he did really well in the major. So if you actually look at the time he has been on LAN in phase, he has played 54 maps online with this roster. He has played for 4 months and he has now played 2 prestige events. And if you just go and look, the numbers are fucking bad. They are not good. And does he occasionally shoot some people in the head? Yes. If it was happening a lot more, the numbers would be a lot better. That's literally how frags work, boys. You can't tell me someone has amazing aim and then their stats are shit. It doesn't work that way. There's got to be something in there that grounds the idea that the aim turns into kills, turns into stats. That is how stats are generated. So my problem is this. I still do think broky's a problem. If you could bring a player in, if instead of broky, maybe Jacob can stay. But they're clearly not going to. They're clearly sticking with it. And if anything, the actual player who saved their career in fucking phases run wasn't Jacob, it was broky. Broky saved his fucking career in that match. And also, one of the highest viewed matches of Krakow so far was the phase against BC game. That was one of the rare games broky was pretty good in. So far, when all the spotlight's been there, broky's kept his job safe, mate. And he's missed a phase anyway, ain't he? I think if you're Jacob, you're right back on the hot seat, mate. This is how analysis works. This is how punditry works. This is how numbers work. So tell me I'm wrong. I'm putting it as bad. I think Jacob's just bad, mate. For phase clan. For phase clan.
Yeah, you're not wrong. fuck, I'm not ready for another Polish fight here,
Okay.
but I think we all agree, and I think the stats speak for themselves. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and fuck it. Then Jacob is not good enough for FaZe Clan, but maybe he is good enough for FaZe Clan because FaZe Clan is a shit team right now. I'm not even sure if.
All right.
Not even sure
All right.
if
I see how you squared that circle. Okay.
Yeah, but like, I'm not sure if I keep that on Jacob, but
Yeah.
I will say that.
Well, like, because he did, what the genius move he did there, Maui, is if you say you hate one type of people, you're an evil bigot. If you say you just hate people, you're just a normal everyday misanthrope, mate. That's totally fine. That's genius. Well done, Pimp. Keep going. I like it.
Thanks, man.
I like it.
Thanks, man. I think the best way I can do it is that Jacob he's not a FaZe player material, and he shouldn't be at the biggest events, and be expected to do a good job. Maybe he should join Gamer Legion. Maybe he should do the same route that's next did. Join a less prominent team and then nurture him within Gamer Legion. See if there's something to be said about him being a good player. Because I'll be honest, I was pretty vocal about Jacob, heading into the major as well. I think it was, and I still will say this. I think FaZe should have kept Rain for the major. I think it was a giant mistake to bring in a player for a major like FaZe where they needed a result badly. As Kerrigan said, they needed to do well at the major in order to get invited to the beginning of the next season. Otherwise, they would end up in this VIS hell where they wouldn't get any events whatsoever. So if short-term success was the goal for FaZe Clan, it would have been better to bring Rain to that event. I have no problem saying that. That's not necessarily anything against Jacob, but it was just even that they did well, like even FaZe getting to the grand final, I still think that was a mistake. Because when Kerrigan doing the major said that, yeah, Jacob is still dealing with some nerves and we're trying to calm him down, he's going to figure it out over time, he's great. Like, fuck me, it's a major, right? And you're telling me that you need a result badly at the major and you're willingly taking in a player that is still dealing with nerves on a high level where you like have to calm him down before a game. I don't think that's not FaZe level mentality right there. I think that's bullshit. I think Jacob is way over his head right now. Like he's in deep waters. He's not good enough to be a guy that comes into FaZe Clan and save a shit FaZe Clan, which is in fact what they are right now. He may be a player that can join Gamer Legion, build a career, settle some of those nerves, use that great aim of his, because I think he has certain aspects to his game where he's very, very good. Pistol rounds, as you said, one of them he did fantastically well in the playoff in pretty much every single pistol round. I don't think that was on coincidence, because when he did it consistently, there's something to be said about it. But he's not a FaZe Clan player right now, and he's definitely not a player that can help them out of a slump. Neither is broky, and that's why I'm fucking mad that FaZe is wasting everyone's time. Like, you're wasting Twist, you're wasting Frozen, maybe to some degree even Kerrigan's time right now with having a shit team, and I'm not for it. I hope they change, I hope they blow up, I hope they merge with NAVI, and I hope one of them shuts down so we can have a good team combined by the two.
There was this image of Kerrigan after their crash out where it showed him playing CS really late into the night or something like that. I don't think that's going to help broky or Jacob play better. That's not what I need to see. I get Kerrigan could frag a little bit better. Sometimes his performance are ghastly. You look at the scoreboard at the end and you're like, how can you even frag that badly as a professional player? But I just think that the Jacob he sold us on a lie. Like, the major really sold me. I thought I was listening maybe to Launders too much. He was probably one guys that's high on Jacob, and I was kind of like, yeah, you know what? I'm seeing some aspects of him, but I still feel the same. Actually, watching him at Krakow again and the bounty kind of reminded me of all of the flaws in Jacob that before stage 2 of the major or whatever, where he played pretty well, which is that given past the first 45 seconds with this guy, he has none of the FaZe magic juice that gave Rain and the rest of those guys so much staying power in tournaments that they had no business in, because that's just playing off of a decade of being with the same teammates practically, and just everybody just coming together in late round clutch moments. And it feels like there was a telepathy between Rain that I think FaZe are pretty sorely missing right now. That it's one of those things that you didn't even know you had it till it's gone, and they've already been vocal about that. They've talked about that part of the FaZe magic left with Rain when he was gone. So I think that there's a bit of seller's remorse here for FaZe.
I think the best point you made, Duncan, is the fact that even though Jacob is statistically not a great player, and even though that you would point towards him and be like, clearly not cut for it, like, broky is still a bigger issue for me in FaZe Clan. That's crazy, because I feel like, as you said, broky saved his FaZe career during the major, so did Jacob, but I'm willing to give Jacob another couple of tournaments, because that was the first time we saw potential. Was for broky, like, how long are we gonna hope that he's going to come back and hope he's going to be consistent. He did well in Cologne, the first event he returned to, and lost a bit of weight, and well done for that. And then everyone's like, it's a new energy, it's a new broky, it's a new personality. Went to shit from that point and onwards. Doing the first stage of the major, doing part of the second stage of the world, played probably the worst Counter-Strike broky has played ever at a major. And then he turned it up, and credit for doing that. Credit to all the FaZe Clan guys, and Jacob for that matter, for doing a miraculous run during the major. But I think everyone who follows Counter-Strike for day to day were like, does that mean they're going to be good in 2026? Because I don't really think so. I don't think anyone expected them to be a top 5 team, to be completely honest, if they were to put their money where their mouth is. But at the end of the day, I think broky is a bigger issue than Jacob within FaZe Clan, and that speaks volume because Jacob is not doing well at all.